Welcome back to Bachman's Basement. I'm your host, Chris Clawson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Patton. On this episode, we're taking a chilling ride through the deserted grounds of Joyland, Stephen King's haunted amusement park. The rides may sit quiet, but the screams of the past are still ringing through the air. Join us as we uncover the park's darkest secrets and discover who killed Linda Gray. Before we get started, how's your week been, Chris?
It's been pretty good, man. It was busy this weekend. I helped a friend of mine move, and we almost had a refrigerator fall on us, which is a different story for a different day. But my shoulder's a little banged up, a little sore. Outside of that, like things I've been doing, watching. I watched I'm on season 3 of Law and Order, so continuing down this long journey of the original Law and Order. A lot there to unpack and go through, and been playing Red Dead Redemption 2, which is still an absolutely phenomenal game. I know there's a remaster or an updated version coming out. I saw that and I was like, damn, I missed that game. So I started replaying it, and it's great. If you make it through the tutorial, a lot of people I know that I recommended it to, they didn't make it through the tutorial. But once you get through the tutorial, that thing really opens up. It's still one of my favorite games, if not my favorite game. It's brilliant. Everything about it, the way it looks, the way it plays. I was going to try to play back through as a baddie this time, and so far that has not been the case. It seems like there is no slow buildup of becoming bad. It's not like, still a pack of chewing gum, and then
it's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing. You're a straight serial killer or be a good guy. So that kind of went out the window, man. It's like, that holds true to some older games, like Knights of the Old Republic was one that I always ran into. So I think I'm just going to go the route of watching the bad guy ending on YouTube and call it a day, I guess. But what have you been up to, man? What you been playing? What you been watching? What you been doing?
Yeah. Well, I finished up to, the most current episode on the TV show Has Been Hotel. It's on Prime Video. Really, really good show. Animated. And then another Prime Video show, Critical Role's The Legend of Vox Machina. I'm in season 3, about halfway through that, and fantastic show as well. I've been watching a lot of animated stuff lately, I guess. Did just go see The Running Man in theater, and I know we're going to catch up to that here soon, so I won't say too much about that, but that I did enjoy it. So
yeah, that's going to be a big one on the show coming up. I think that's going to be I believe that's our next episode, right? So
yeah, I think so.
We'll unpack all of that. But yeah, as far as anime goes, the only thing I've watched recently is Sakamoto Days, which is a Netflix original based on the manga. It's really fun. It's about a hitman who is kind of overweight, and he runs this grocery store, and he's been out of the game for a while, and they're sending people to come take him out because he knows too much, apparently. And it's about these other failed attempts at his life and how they end up kind of working at the grocery store with him. It's pretty funny. It's a pretty funny tell. It's one worth a watch for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I guess the one other thing that has comprised my week is our weekly family Dagger Heart session, which went incredibly well, and also unexpectedly we had a crazy violent encounter in the storyline that just due to my buffoonery as in my character, it just made for like a crazy violent encounter that didn't need to happen, but it was really exciting, and I think everyone had a really good time with it.
You gotta love the term. Gotta love the term buffoonery. And so you ran in all Leroy Jenkins, and things did not turn out that well for you, huh?
That they didn't, but thankfully I escaped with my life, and we did defeat the baddies. Or I guess they turned out to be baddies, but they didn't necessarily. We didn't need to fight with them. We could have. Well, my daughter Cindy was doing a good job of being a diplomat, and then I just kind of thought I could step in and be all clever, and it did not work out. So.
Sounds like a blast. I'm looking forward to checking that game out. It's just finding someone to play with, getting a group together. That's always the hardest thing about stuff like that.
Right?
You got a built-in group, so that helps.
Does. We're definitely planning to do other, versions of the Dagger Heart thing down the line with other groups. But man, it's been really fun. So I would recommend that. It's a different version of D&D. It's not D&D, but it's D&D-esque, as we might have talked about previously.
It's the light beer of D&D.
Yeah, a little more, maybe a little more approachable for newcomers to the world of D&D. But yeah, I guess getting on to our episode here and talking about the book Joyland. Do a little overview here. Our story is set in the summer of 1973 at the small old-fashioned amusement park on the coast of North Carolina. We pick up with college student Devin Jones, who is going to be taking a summer job working as a carnival worker. Initially, he's just trying to save some money and attempt to mend his broken heart after a major breakup with his first and only girlfriend, Wendy Keegan. He meets all sorts of colorful characters on his summer job here at the park. And while learning about carnival culture and all the talk, as it's referred to, also a little side note that Stephen King mentions on the final page of the book, explains that part of the lingo is real, and then part of it is just him making stuff up for the sake of writing fiction. So just a cool little side note that he put in there at the end. But throughout the summer, Devin becomes obsessed with the local legend about a young woman, Linda Gray, who was murdered 4 years earlier in the park's horror house ride. The story goes that Linda's throat was slit at the darkest corner of the ride by an unknown man who had been seen in photos, but he has facial hair and a baseball cap and sunglasses on, so nobody can really figure out who he is. Her body's dumped in a dark corner of the ride where it's not discovered for the better part of a day. Meanwhile, the killer walks away without suspicion. Supposedly, her ghost still haunts the ride. Devin goes on, makes lifelong friendships over the summer, saves a few lives throughout, his time at Joyland during the peak season. And as the summer comes to a close, you as the reader are looking at how many pages are left in the book and thinking, wow, I wonder where Stephen King's taken this, because there's still half a book left. And so Devin, and I guess, decides to stay on during the off season instead of going back to college, as he is determined to solve this cold case murder. The novel blends mystery, nostalgia, a bit of the supernatural, as well as a bittersweet coming-of-age tale about confronting dark truths and growing up. What did you think about it, Chris?
It's an interesting one, right? Because I think it does hit on all of the themes that you just spoke on. Devin's story is a transition from just being completely heartbroken to having this purpose of, I've got to figure this out, I got to solve this, and then transitioning into adulthood. So in that sense, it's very much a coming of age story. Your first real job, your first actual responsibilities, deep emotional bonds with friends, your first heartbreak. It's all there, but then you get into some of the weird other things that come along with any kind of Stephen King book, right? Like psychics and
yeah,
like they did the other aspects of this, ghosts haunting the paranormal.
Sure.
It's fun, man. I like a good who did it, and this one's unique as far as those go. There's definitely shades to some of the 40s and 50s detective novels, and radio broadcast specifically is the first thing I thought of as someone who loves, and we've talked about even maybe doing one on this show, even though it's not really Stephen King, but some of those 1940s broadcasts, like radio broadcasts and stuff from back in the day, just because I find them so intriguing. And this has those elements. You also get a lot of, in the way it's written, you get a lot of escapism, versus like reality of the situation, because you get this bright, colorful amusement park setting, right? And then
Yeah.
underneath this dark truth about what happened to Linda Gray, right? So I don't know, man. I think there's a little bit here for everyone. You can't really say that about a lot of Stephen King things, but this one is. I think this is one if you were just going through an airport and picked it up and knew nothing about Stephen King, you just sort of like, I like a good detective book.
Right.
I think you would dig it.
I think that like you're saying, it's written under the hard case crime publisher, which isn't his normal publisher. So obviously it's got a specific style that is reminiscent of that hard case, hard boiled detective novels. That company apparently was founded in 2004 from my research by a couple gentlemen, Charles Ardai and Max Phillips. If you guys are interested, they publish new stories from current authors, as well as reissues of acclaimed older works from the 40s and 50s. And Stephen King has written a few other novels under this publisher, namely The Colorado Kid and a novel titled Later, which I'm sure we'll be getting around to covering at some point for you guys.
So I've read Colorado Kid, but I've never touched Later, so I'm not sure how that one goes.
It's fantastic. That's one of the few Stephen King books that, and again, these hard case books are sort of their own animal. I think they're shorter, like Joyland. It's like 300 pages, so they're quick reads. You can read them in a day or two. And Later is one of the few books where I read it and I just liked it so much, I immediately just turned back to the first page and I read it again. So I'm excited. It's been however long. I mean, I read Later like the week it came out to stores. So maybe like 5 or 6 years. But yeah, excited to get around to that one eventually. But I would say that this novel is a standout. While it's not King's best work, it's just his gift for combining, all of these elements we've been talking about, that coming of age story, the supernatural elements, all these things that just make the story a joy to read. You just kind of get lost in like escapism, like you're saying. But thinking about like what I really liked about the story, I guess the uncertainty of one's future, especially when you're young, just a relatable concept. And I feel like Joyland perfectly distills that feeling. As you're reading it, you can really relate to the character of Devin Jones.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. One of the things that I liked most about it is just the setting and the atmosphere. I'm a sucker for these old theme parks, like Joyland the park kind of gives you Coney Island vibes, for sure. It's built as kind of a nostalgic version of the old seaside amusement parks, and that's definitely what they're going for. No huge roller coasters, just like classic rides, fun houses, flat rides, horror houses, midway games, that kind of stuff. And the Carney talk is it's always funny when I hear Carney talk or the talk as he calls it, because I think of wrestling, right? Because all of that stuff translated to wrestling because of the back in the day, wrestlers were also carnival attractions. That's how wrestling got its start. So he's doing the talk. I'm like, oh, okay. This is a work or is it a shoot, brother? All joking aside. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing here is kind of Devin Jones's, much like I said, kind of in the opening there, is his, I don't know, his travels through adulthood, definitely coming of age. I love stuff like that. So, I mean, if you're trying to compare it to something else he's done, it almost has like the Stand By Me feel, right?
Absolutely.
As
Yeah.
far as that goes.
That. It's got that nostalgic sort of like young people, coming of age thing going. Although it's not really too much like that story, it has that feel for sure.
Yeah, just more of an overall feel, not like if you well, I mean, I think if you like that, you'll also like this, but they have nothing to do with one another. But yeah, I don't know, man. Devin Jones is a fun character. Very sensitive, right? And like it's almost like King is writing it as himself a little bit. He wants to be a writer. He's more introspective than actually brave. Like it's kind of all of the things that you would think of if King was pinning himself into a book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that naivete of the 21-year-old thinks they got their life figured out. They think they know where it's going, and then turns out the life has other plans for them. So.
Yeah, turns out it's just like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. You're just a kid. You don't know shit about shit.
Right? So correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think this is maybe Stephen King's only whodunit story as well in his long and illustrious career. I don't think he's ever written another story that's like that traditional whodunit, although that's just an element of this story.
Yeah, not that I can think of, right? Like there's definitely elements of different books where it's like you don't know who the baddie is. But this being more of a classic, here's the setup of what the crime was. Here's some characters. Can you figure out which one is the one that committed the crime?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that he has a ton of those. I'm not going to say none, just because I haven't read his entire catalog, because that's what part of what the show is about, is me reading some things that I haven't read. But yeah, I mean, like out of the things that I have read, there's some elements where sometimes you're like, well, what's going on here? But never like so directly like that part of the book is about Devin trying to solve the crime, right? I don't know that there's any of that.
Yeah, I don't think just from my experience, and it's just me thinking off the top of my head, really, as I was kind of putting this episode together, I was trying to think of all of his other novels and just kind of checking through them quickly in my head. And I don't think he's got another one that kind of fills this particular, void of story arc. But, sort of in the same vein as like the Scream films being a good example of a whodunit in cinema, I feel like this story is excellent at sort of building up the characters that are surrounding our main character, and sort of doing some bait and switches here and there, and you're thinking you know who it is and you don't, which I really enjoy.
It also points to like the greatness of Stephen King, right? To be flexible enough to write a who did it or who done it, however you want to say it, but also tie it back into where it'll have some stuff for his fans that may be coming from a different genre.
Yeah, I think that it's cool that he's done some more detective novels with his regular publisher in the last 10 years, famously the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, and all these Hawley spin-off novels that he's done in recent years are very much these detective stories, although they're not whodunits. You know who the killer is in these stories.
Right.
So, but another sort of like little side note or something that you could easily notice if, as you're reading this, that it kind of, in a way, feels a little bit like, or it's easy to compare it to like a Scooby-Doo story, young folks solving a mystery at an amusement park, no less. But I feel like the gravity of the characters and the things that are happening along the way just give this story a little more weight, instead of just being a classic Saturday morning cartoon. It's something more than that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not he's trying to shut down the amusement park. It ends up being the old man who wants insurance money or whatever. It's like, no, like an actual murder happened here.
Right.
Be a serial killer.
Certainly a serial killer involved. And as I had said earlier in the intro, we were going to discover who killed Linda Gray. But as I got to thinking about it, I feel like that could ruin the fun of this story for anyone out there who hasn't read this, as it is a mystery after all. And what reason would you have to go read it if you know the who and the whodunit? So I'm going to leave that out myself, just because I think it would just ruin the fun of the story for you guys if you go out and pick this book up. And it's such a quick read. you should just give it a shot if this story sounds at all interesting to you.
Yeah, it's one of those weird ones where there's only so much we can talk about without people starting to formulate what the answer might be.
Right. I mean, talking about the characters, for example, thinking about like I did an outline and kind of put all the characters in a list and how their connection to Devin and so on and so forth. And then I was thinking, well, I don't want to talk too much about too many of the characters that could ruin it. So I figured I'd just maybe touch on one or two of my favorite characters, just to kind of add a little more flavor. Is if you haven't read the story, there's character Rosie Gold. She's this New York woman that has been in the carnival life most of her life. She puts on this Romani accent and becomes Madame Fortuna when she's reading people's fortunes at Joyland. And I just found her to be fascinating. She gives the character of Devin some advice early in the story, which turns out to be exactly true. And I feel like, even though maybe she's just kind of got a shtick, she's not maybe a full-blown psychic. I do believe she has a little bit of the shine, as Stephen King may say. What did you think?
Yeah, she's a very interesting character. I always like a good. I mean, Stephen King loves a good fortune teller in his stories, anyways. But yeah, it definitely alludes to her having a genuine psychic ability, even with all the other gimmicks attached to it, right? So, and much like you, her early reading in the book for Devin, it definitely foreshadows everything else that's coming down the line without us giving too much away, as well as Mike, who's another character in this book. I find a phenomenal character in this book. His role in Devin's life.
I agree. Yeah, that it's interesting because that character of Mike Ross, you meet him early in the story as Devin's making his way to work. Every day he walks down the beach and then cuts over to the amusement park, and he runs into this young boy, Mike Ross, and his mom, who are just out on the beach enjoying the summer. But the character of Mike is sort of feels like maybe just a very small character in the first half of the story, and then becomes a major player in the second half.
Right. It's like what you were saying when you get to midway through the book, you think it should be over, and then you look down and you're like, oh, there's like 150 pages left.
Right. It feels like that this story it's like it's two stories that are woven together, where you have Devin and his friends, his coworkers and fellow roommates, where he lives for the summer. These characters of Tom and Aaron, and they're sort of like his Scooby gang and fellow coworkers. And then as the summer comes to a close, those characters go back to college, and then Devin has a new group, which is Annie and Mike, for the fall. And it's like the story that happens as the main seasons change from summer into fall. It's like almost like a different story.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to talk about. Mike is what I mean, to me, was one of my favorite characters in the book, but it's hard to talk about without putting a lot of the story on Front Street. But a very interesting character that alludes back to some other Stephen King novels as far as how he develops.
Certainly wise beyond his years, for sure.
For sure.
And I guess just to sort of help you as the listener get a sense of how the story concludes without ruining it, there's a very dramatic nighttime life and death interaction at the shuttered amusement park with a tropical storm rolling in, and it's very cinematic. And I thought it's interesting how almost cinematic this story really is. And Stephen King famously, almost all of his books have been turned into a story at this point, but this is not one of them. So I know I've been waiting and kind of watching the internet and all the rumor mill and everything, and so far it's an unfinished script that has not been greenlit by a studio. So we'll see. Hopefully it does get a film treatment at some point.
Yeah, it would almost be more fun to, and I don't know who would go about doing this, but to get a bunch of writers together and do a series of small detective or hard case things like this, and this just be a part of a one episode,
Like,
two
or it could
episode
be
thing.
like an anthology series that are like these hard case stories turned into like little mini series, sort of like True Detective, but like on maybe a little more family friendly version of that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, something like that I think would be really cool as opposed to a movie. Even though, like you said, I think the ending of this and the way that it's described to you as a reader is very cinematic, right? Like you can picture everything in your head. And I really enjoyed this read, especially as someone who wasn't the
Yeah, and I mean
fondest of one of the last books we read's ending. I liked this ending a lot.
right. Yeah, that it does. It feels it's strong from beginning to end, and it's such a quick read that it almost feels like the only thing I don't like about this is like how you just want more. You want more of this world. At least I did.
You want more of it, and it also kind of ends bittersweetly, where you know that Joyland is transformed, and it's not always going to be there. That's the end of nostalgia, right? Like to some extent.
I mean, this story to a degree is you kind of realize he even says it where he's recounting this time of his life as a man in his 60s, and he's thinking back to this magic summer, that was good and bad and everything in between.
Yep, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I guess thanks again for joining us here at Bachman's Basement. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to join us every Saturday with a new episode. And once again, I'm your host, Chris Clawson.
And I'm Chris Patton.
And if you're looking to get in contact with either of us, you can find us online at Facebook, where I'm just Christopher Clawson. And on Instagram, I'm Chris_Clawson 1982.
On Facebook for me, it's Christopher.R.Patton, and on Instagram, Christopher.R.Patton. On Twitter, etc., it's Chris.R.Patton. And also check out Boink Studios, our parent, the podfather himself, Tom, who's always helping us out behind the scenes. Just recently did a show with him for 6M, where we went over Exile on Main Street, as well as recently we just went over Dirty Deeds, the AC/DC album. So lots of fun stuff to listen to on Boink Studio. Ray's Sports All Day, or Ray Sports and Slam. Sorry, bye Ray All Day. But yeah, lots of cool stuff. So make sure you're checking it out. We almost have a show at this point. We have a show almost every day of the week, something, and then always the Patton Report, which is just where I talk about video games for the most part, and whatever else pop culture comes up to mind.
Awesome. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of our trip down the Midway at Joyland. And as this story reminds us, some of the seasons of our lives, however brief, do change us. That they leave behind ghosts, and they also leave behind a kind of lingering magic. As Devin learned in the story, sometimes the best mystery is the act of growing up.